Hey everybody, hope your day is going well. We are back with another reaction. I wanted to learn a little bit more about My Sweet Lord and He's So Fine, the songs, and the lawsuit that George Harrison lost. And I don't know if that was correct ruling. I'm way too, uninformed for that, but I do want to be informed a little bit more. It's tough when it comes to art and music and writing. As I mentioned in the reaction that I've done to He's So Fine, I've reacted to it on my other channel. You come up with similar ideas in writing, like when I write stories and I thought, oh, I have such a great original idea, then I, go to Google and say, oh man, somebody already did it. It's like, oh man, you get kind of crazy if you start looking things up. Everything already, kind of exists, and you put your own twist on things and make it, your own. So here I did hear the similarities in certain melodies from certain lines, but then there was also many differences. So it's tough. And I know, like, Ed Sheeran, he had a big lawsuit with his Thinking Out Loud song, and Marvin Gaye, Let's Get It On, but he won it, right? So where's the difference there? I was thinking, like, where's the difference? He really also went up in court and talked about chords and so many similarities and chord progressions, and you can only do so much. So I was wondering how George lost it and then he won it. So yeah, let's see if there's any clarity after this video.
Look, I'd be willing every time I write a song, if somebody will have a computer and I can just go up to the thing and sing my new song into it, and the computer will say, sorry, or yes, okay.
Oh, wow. Wow. Yeah, now with AI, that might be possible very soon. But then AI itself is spitting out songs that are so similar to songs that already exist. So we got a little bit of a problem there. We need human songs only. All right. But wow, that's crazy that he said that. So I definitely don't think, like I mentioned in the Chiffon's reaction, that he did it intentionally. How could you hide it if you're George Harrison, one of the biggest artists in the world? Okay, well, are we getting similar songs here? Oh, really? Oh, yeah, I remember this one, right. And that one was lost, right? Blurred Lines and Got to Give It Up. Seems like the estate of Marvin Gaye is really going after it.
Oh, won't you stay with me? Well, I won't back down.
Wow.
In recent years, we've heard a
put it
lot
like
about
that.
music lawsuits. The three I just played have all been in the spotlight in the last 6
there
years.
were lawsuits
But
of
we
that.
can just
I
as
didn't know.
easily go back 4 or 5 decades for another example. Hello, it's Lance Osborne, and here on the Fab 4 Archivist channel, we look at the people, stories, and music that made the Beatles the biggest band in the world. This time we're going to go outside the Beatle box and look.
This is the first video I check out of this channel. I must dip in because I'm really, I can't even talk. I'm really learning about the Beatles, so this might be a great resource. I'm going to leave the link to this video in the description, so if you probably are aware of this channel, but there might be interesting stuff there for Beatles fans that are not aware of this channel.
Look at the time George Harrison got sued for copyright infringement and lost. The story starts just months after the formal breakup of the Beatles with the release of George Harrison's song, My Sweet Lord. The song was a smash hit worldwide and was #1 in the US for 4 weeks. But was the song really his?
My sweet Lord, my Lord.
It is a great
Shortly
song.
after the song's release, Harrison was sued in United States District Court by Brightunes Music Publishing for plagiarism. The song they claim he ripped off? The oldies classic, He's So Fine.
He's so fine. Wish he were mine.
This song was written by Ronnie Mack, who was also responsible for bringing together the song's performers, girl group The Chiffons. Mack died in 1963, the year the tune hit #1. But the song's publishing was handled by Brightunes, a company set up by these guys. When My Sweet Lord hit the ears of those at Brightunes, little time was wasted before they filed suit. The songs sound extremely similar. Because of, ironically, copyright reasons, I can't play much of the tracks here, but I'll link to them individually in the description, as well as a mashup that proves their undeniable likeness.
He's so fine.
Harrison was no stranger to lawsuits. For instance, in the early 70s, Paul McCartney sued his former bandmates over business squabbles, inspiring George to write 1973's Sue Me, Sue You blues.
See, I'm learning as I go along. I did not know about this, so kind of like that title.
But the lawsuit over My Sweet Lord was different. Instead of business disagreements, the copyright infringement suit went to the core of George's work as an artist. Harrison wrote My Sweet Lord, starting with the Alleluia bit.
The thing I was on the Delaney and Bonnie tour at the time, and I just thought of the idea, and it was just that answer thing of just singing Alleluia, Alleluia, and all, with about 4 or 5 part harmony. So that's what came first, and then the other bit was just like scat singing, My Sweet Lord, My Sweet Lord. It was just a hook.
As fate would have it, it was this hook that got George in trouble.
My sweet Lord. My Lord.
He's so fine. Wish you were mine.
With attorney/manager Alan Klein, Harrison tried to settle the matter before it went to trial. Klein was intimately familiar with the music industry and was
Isn't this the guy like you don't want to have meetings with, or else your band breaks up?
indeed wealthy from it as manager of acts like Sam Cooke and the Rolling Stones. In a clever attempt to resolve the matter, Klein offered that Harrison could purchase the entire Bright Tunes catalog. But offers were rejected, as Bright Tunes surely smelled big money. My Sweet Lord and the album it appeared on sold millions of copies. Unrelated to the My Sweet Lord case, the Bright Tunes company went into receivership and the entire situation was put on hold. It was around this time that Harrison's agreement with Klein, dating from the Beatles years, ended. Like most of the band members' encounters with Klein, things ended poorly. More on Klein in a moment.
I have heard about
Negotiations continued as Bright Tunes came back to life over the years. In January of 1976, Harrison made an offer of $148,000 to settle the case. He would still own the copyright to My Sweet Lord, but that sum represented nearly half of what the song had earned Harrison in the U.S. The offer was initially noted as a fair one by the attorneys for Bright Tunes, but was ultimately rejected. Why?
Oh,
Alan Klein again and again
No.
on that no moment.
this Alan Klein, man. I've been, listening to certain books and memoirs, and I watched the Get Back documentary as well, and other artists. I listened to Fortunate Son by John Fogerty, where Alan Klein was also mentioned. He keeps popping up, and most of the time, it's not that great. Not that great.
Having not reached a settlement, the case went to court. A trial was held on February 23rd through the 25th, 1976, in United States District Court in Manhattan to determine liability. In other words, did George Harrison infringe on someone else's copyrighted work?
I was requested to go and take my guitar, which was really terrible. I had to stand up
I think
in
Ed
court
Sheeran
with
did
my
that as
guitar.
well, right?
So all these people grilling me and talk about how you write a song, which is really difficult because every song is slightly different anyway.
You know how I mentioned it was the hook?
I think that Ed Sheeran did the same thing almost the same thing. Talk about songwriting and chord progressions and stuff, and he won. So it's so interesting where the difference lies. I don't know. I'm just not, that informed about the case itself. I only know he won it ultimately, and George lost it. But they did want to settle. That almost happened, and then Alan Klein.
That got George in trouble? George testified at the trial where the song and this hook were analyzed and compared, not only by Harrison and attorneys, but also by musicologists brought in as outside experts.
What happened, they blew up the, what they call Motive A, which was da-da-da. They had that blown up about 6 feet square in court, and they kept talking about these 3 notes, and the musicologist came on and played like about 15 or 20 songs, all with the same notes.
My sweet Lord.
He's so fine.
Yeah, that part is very, very
My
similar.
sweet
Yeah.
Lord.
He's so fine.
My sweet Lord.
He's so fine.
6 months after the trial, Judge Richard Owen rendered a decision.
But then there's other parts that are different, and there's other parts that sound similar. You could definitely hear like the similarities, that's for sure, you know. But then the ruling or the judgment has to be: is it plagiarism? Is it copyright infringement? Yeah, I think on another day he might have won it, or I think maybe, yeah, I don't know.
In favor of Bright Tunes. Harrison indeed infringed. Judge Owen said, "Did Harrison deliberately use the music of He's So Fine? I do not believe he did so deliberately. Nevertheless, it is clear that My Sweet Lord is the very same song as He's So Fine with different words, and Harrison had access to He's So Fine. This is, under the law, infringement of copyright, and is no less so even though subconsciously accomplished." George Harrison's primary defense was that he didn't copy He's So Fine on purpose, and the judge believed him. But copyright laws do not require the intent to infringe. They only consider if the act of infringement itself occurred.
I believe him as well.
Now, about Alan Klein. I'll spare you the gory details here, but the short story is that after Alan Klein was dismissed by Harrison, he remained in the picture. There were more offers to buy the Bright Tunes catalog, but instead of operating on the behalf of Harrison, Klein was now working on his own behalf. If this were the stock market, this would definitely be some variation of insider trading.
Dang.
Klein ultimately bought the rights
This
to He's So
guy.
Fine on April 13th, 1978, moving to the other side of the courtroom aisle, from defendant to plaintiff.
What?
While the liability portion of the trial wrapped in 1976, the damages decision wouldn't come until 1981. Financial details on this are not only a pile of spaghetti, but there are some that are still debated. The most clear-cut answer is that damages were determined to be just shy of $1.6 million.
Damn.
As these legal things go, the whole process, damages paid, etc., didn't technically end until 1998. Yeah, 27 years after the lawsuit was first filed.
Wow.
Do that, because the last thing I want to do is keep spending my life in court.
Dang.
Once you get people thinking, oh, well, they beat Harrison on Sweet Lord,
That's-
let's sue. They can sue the world, you know?
That's a great point. Like, where does that end? Because, you know, now we could go look for any song that is similar. It's tough. Like, I really believe, like, maybe on another day he could have won it. And maybe Ed Sheeran on another day could have lost it, you know? So, it's, yeah.
It made me so paranoid
man.
about writing that I thought,
Oh,
God, I
man,
don't
I
want to
can
even
imagine.
touch the guitar or the piano in case I'm touching somebody's note.
But there
I
is a
can
bit of a
imagine.
happy ending.
Oh, man.
The Chiffons covered My Sweet Lord. And George Harrison's publishing company,
Really?
Harrisongs Limited, now owns the rights to both songs. And George even channeled his energy back into his craft, writing this song in 1976, which described the situation. It included lines like, "This song ain't black or white, and as far as I know, don't infringe on anyone's copyright."
He's standing in court. Right. Okay.
It'd be different
I'm
if
seeing
it was
it.
the only tune I ever wrote. I've written enough songs and I've,
Yeah.
enough faith in myself. And I know
yeah.
the motive behind writing the song in the first place wasn't to go and steal some tune. So whatever they say, whatever the outcome, I'm cool.
Although the legal battles
You
lasted
cool,
years,
George.
Harrison had no regrets, saying, quote, "I don't feel guilty or bad about it. In fact, it saved many a heroin addict's life. I know the motive behind writing the song in the first place, and its effect far exceeded the legal hassle."
All right, man.
There have been many lawsuits around
Hey, I like
music
that.
and copyright, but there are plenty of times when songs sound alike and no one sues. I'd love to hear your thoughts on
That's
this.
that's the
Oldies or
question I
recent
have.
hits. What are some songs that are obvious copies of others? Let me know down in the comments. All right.
I would
Hope you
definitely be
enjoyed this.
interested in hearing about that. There's some songs like, oh yeah, that reminds me of a song. Does it mean, like, okay, there's a note that reminds me of that. It's the same notes. Or a chord progression that's the same. You can't really copyright chord progressions. Very interesting stuff. It's a mess, like he said in the video. It's spaghetti, which I do like, but yeah, it gets entangled. Yeah, but I do like George's answer there. Like, many people have benefit from the song "My Sweet Lord." It is a song that very soothing and peaceful, and um, So I guess in the end, it's the audience that wins, and he channeled his inspiration, his struggles into more art, and also, like he said, it's not the first tune I wrote. He is one of the best songwriters that ever lived, right? So yeah, my man knows how to write a song. He doesn't have to steal them. All right, it's very interesting. I'm glad I got to know a little bit more about it, and looking forward to continue my journey with the Beatles and the solo projects. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Hope you have a great day. Peace.